if you don't pay the cost of your emotions, you will lose your blessing. When we look into the story of Moses, we all know Moses, the one that got the rod out, put it in the sea, and the sea parted. Moses, the one that had such a relationship with God. Moses, that is probably the only people in Scripture to really see a part of God. And we get to this point that Moses is pissed off with the Israelites. And so the Israelites are pissing him off, and they're thirsty. And so God tells Moses, speak to the rock, and the water will come out. And in a scripture before then, God had spoken to Moses before, saying something similar. But he said back then, I want you to strike the rock and the water will come out. But in this instance, Moses, if you look at the scripture, I'll read it real quick for you guys to let you guys understand it. Numbers 20, verse 7, it says this. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the rod, you and your brother Aaron gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield it water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock and give drink to the congregation and their animals. Now this is what's crazy. Verse 9, it says this. So Moses took the rod before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. And he said, this is how you know Moses was acting out of anger. He says, hear now, you rebels. Hear now, you rebels. Must we bring you water out of this rock? A little bit of attitude. Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rod twice with his rod, and water came out. But at that moment, he had disobeyed God because of anger. And after the scripture, you find that God tells Moses that because of your disobedience and taking glory for yourself, because in that moment, not only was he disobedient, but he basically made it seem like he was the one that provided the water. Because of that sin, you will not be allowed to enter the promised land. What you have basically done your whole life for, you will never get to see it and walk in it. Your whole life, purpose, and mission, you won't even get to taste it. Just because of an emotion. The point person, the tolerant one, the one that was on behalf of them, now has to watch from afar as they reap the benefits that he should have been reaping as well. And this is why, more than ever, as I'm closing, we have to realign our emotions. Give your emotions to God. I think we're in such a great time, just as much as, of course, I said all these things of how emotions can be idolized. I think we're in an amazing time in our age because I think there's so many things such as therapy and counseling that are available. And something happened to me when I was preparing this message. I thought to myself, I've never thought of the idea of going to therapy to help me to be within the will of God. I've never thought of it in that perspective, that maybe I need something so that I can stay within the will of God. Just for thought. And so we need to realize that there's nothing that God will ask of us that his son did not do. There's 3 examples that I want us to highlight very quickly of how Jesus put his emotions in check. The first one was when Jesus overcame Satan in the wilderness. We see Jesus is hungry. He's been fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. I can imagine he's shaking. He's probably just like starving for some really good, I don't know, yams or something. I don't know what they ate, bread, a loaf of bread, I don't know. Really hungry, and I can imagine he's walking home probably to get something to eat, and he's stopped by the devil. And see, at that moment, Jesus has every single reason to disobey because the truth is that he's hungry. Let's be real. He's human. Stomach growling, lips crusty. Let's be real. And so we see the devil challenges Jesus, but through that process, I can imagine, because a lot of times we don't understand that when we let our emotions take control, we won't really deal with the consequences until later. So I can see how amazing it could have been when Jesus overcame the devil and going back home, finally getting to eat that meal and thinking to himself like, imagine if I would have just obeyed then. imagine what would have happened. Imagine how the whole restoration story would have just been put off. That's to some people here that do not let a moment ruin your life. Do not let your emotions ruin your life in a moment. Number 2, the second example, Jesus led Peter and Judas knowing that they would forsake him. If some of us had pre-knowledge of the friends that would actually end up abandoning us, we would be so petty to them. Oh, can you come over? Oh, why do you want me to come over? Why do you want me to go out? I'm not paying, by the way. But Jesus was able to give his complete self, disciple these 2 individuals, knowing at some point that they would forsake him and abandon him. Do you know how hard that is? To have your emotions in check to the point that you know there's 2 individuals in your circle that are going to end up selling you off, and you still give all of yourself to them. And number 3, one of the things I think that are probably the best examples of this, of putting our emotions in check, we see Jesus is about to go to the cross pretty soon, or he's going to be given up to authorities. And before this all happens, he goes into the Garden of Gethsemane and he's praying. And what happens is that Jesus is sweating. Like he's sweating to the point that it turns to blood. I'm sure we know that scripture. He's praying to God. And what does Jesus say? If you could just take this cup of wrath away from me, right? Like, is there any way? He's asking God, is there any way that I could avoid this? For some people, that may be a sign of fear, a sign of anxiety. But there's something that Jesus teaches us in this moment that I think we all need to understand and learn from. In Matthew 26:39, it says, he went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." And this is the part I want us to pay attention to. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. When it comes to our emotions, our complete posture shall always be, yes, this is my emotion, but not my will be done, but yours be done. I may feel sad, but not my will be done, but yours be done. It's not for us to put our emotions to the side. I'm not saying put your emotions to the side. I'm not saying ignore your emotions. In fact, embrace them. They're part of who you are. But realize at the end of the day, not my will, but his will be done. The last thing I want to say, I used this imagery in the first service, and I want to say it again. You know, I always use this statement when it comes to I always pray this as well, that God, I want you to be the driver of my life. Always be the driver of my life. And if you guys know, where do you usually put the kids? In a car, in the back seat, right? And so when I was thinking of this sermon, I was thinking that it's amazing because many of us have given our emotions the driving wheel in our life. In fact, for some of us, God is driving our life, but we've put our emotions in the passenger seat. And the reality is this: when we put our emotions in such a powerful position, our emotions are supposed to let us know, supposed to let us know, like, this is not a good thing. And so our emotions are most likely going to be the ones that if they see God going somewhere that doesn't look right, they will grab the wheel. But I would rather myself be in the passenger seat and my emotions in the back. Why? Because my emotions will always tell me, you're scared. You're anxious. Are you sure this is okay? And because I'm in the front, I can look at God and say, God, I'm a little bit scared. I don't know about this. And God can reaffirm me, and I can let him do him. But many of us, we need to make that switch. Take emotions out the front. Don't let emotions drive your life, because you will crash. You will crash, and you won't be able to recover.